Hello, sportsmen. Do you realize that summer is almost over? Hey, there's a good side to that, though, because hunting season is coming up soon. We're going to talk about whitetail deer antlers and sporting dogs. What's the difference in the way different breeds work in the field? Hey, stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost with ideas on how you can become a more practical sportsman. Whitetail deer, the #1 big game animal in North America. It produces more wild meat for the table than any other species of game because it's a large animal and it's extremely plentiful. But whitetails are not easy animals to hunt. They're nervous creatures. They have highly developed senses, and they like to keep a distance between them and anything that looks, or sounds, or smells like a predator. That's why they take a few bites of food and then look around. Big bucks have a typical big buck walk. They bob their head as if it's a great pain to take a step. When he stops, you're going to see him chew his cud. This is food he horsed down earlier and later spends hours re-chewing when he can watch for predators. The buck is the one that the hunters have traditionally been after for several reasons. First of all, bucks are generally bigger, more meat. Secondly, in the years when deer were in short supply, wildlife managers restricted deer hunting to bucks only because taking the males from the herd did not have any effect on next year's reproduction. An active buck in his prime will mate with a number of does in the fall, 10, maybe 20, or even more. That means that most of the smaller bucks simply aren't needed. The big ones take care of next year's fawn crop. Naturally, with hunters harvesting more bucks than does during a year, there are less bucks than does in the woods. But there are far more bucks and far more deer than hunters ever see. And these deer aren't usually hiding back in the boondocks either. Most of them hide right under our noses. These deer are standing because they're in the 5-acre range pens at the Houghton Lake Deer Research Station, a great place for us to study deer with our cameras. Whitetails take enormous strides when they run, often 20 feet apart. How high can they leap? 8 or 9 feet with ease. In this grass, I suspect they're leaping so they can see better. Does and fawns have been seen jumping between strands of barbed wire that were a foot apart at a dead run without touching either wire. And how fast do whitetails run? Usually 20 to 25 miles an hour, but they can reach speeds up to 40 miles an hour. The size of deer is often a fooler. At a distance, they look larger than they really are. Now, this one here weighs 223 pounds as he stands. Not an unusual weight for a southern Michigan buck, 4.5 years old. 1.5-year-olds average between 120 and 150 pounds on the hoof. That yields about 30 to 35 pounds of boneless, trimmed, pure meat. This buck here is a little bony. Not the best buck to take if you're a meat hunter. Set your sights on a heavier deer, one with a little fat over the ribs. It's an old saying, though, that you can't eat the antlers. But antlers are still an attraction to hunters. The bigger the better, a lot of people feel. Now this buck, for some reason, hasn't rubbed the velvet off his antlers yet. It's peeling off, but evidently he hasn't been rubbing enough. He's also a shy buck, staying away from the rest of the herd as much as possible. Maybe the velvet is still sensitive for some reason, but this buck is a little behind in his antler development. Speaking of comparative development, in these pens at Houghton Lake are 1.5-year-old bucks that the DNR is using to study antler development. Now, despite the fact that they eat the same food and are exactly the same age, this buck has long single spikes, while his pen mate has a nice-looking 6-point rack. There's no truth to the tale that points on a buck's antlers can be used to count its age. All these deer are 1.5 old. Many have fork horns, little 4-point racks. And one fast developer even has an 8-point rack. Now that's in his first year of antler growth. Food can influence antler size, but primarily it's genetics. The offspring of deer with big racks tend to grow big racks too. And as you might guess, big racked bucks get more respect from the rest of the deer. Watch the smaller deer scoot when this big buck moves. When he puts his headgear down and walks through a crowd, they open up a path. That's the law of the jungle with big bucks. This buck probably bumped or injured the short side of his racks some way when they were in the velvet. That's usually what causes abnormal antlers. Now, genetics is a major factor in antler size along with nutrition, but just how much a high-protein diet affects antlers in one season isn't really known. The DNR is studying that question with this group of deer right here. Antlers are the fastest-growing bone in the animal world, and they are actually bones, but they're not like the bones inside an animal's body because they're solid. Antlers have no hollow center with marrow. In the wild, bucks this size and this age probably wouldn't see much breeding this year. Well, actually, now they would see it, but they wouldn't be doing it themselves. The 3- and 4-year-olds have most of the action, but there's a chance that this youngster, with his highly developed rack, would do his share of breeding too. Mother Nature puts the biggest racks on the healthiest, strongest bucks. They're the ones that win the battles for the does, and their genes are passed on to future generations of deer. Next week, we're going to demonstrate specific strategies bow hunters use to locate and lure in the big bucks with scents, mock scrapes, and rattling. Whitetail deer are fascinating to study. They're the most wary of our big game animals, and this season there will be plenty taken by hunters and many more for hunters to watch during their days in the deer blinds. You know, we consider dogs to be man's best friend, just for companionship. But if you're a hunter, a good dog can expand your enjoyment of hunting in the field. What kind of breed should you get? Well, let's talk with hunting dog trainer Warren Cahoon. Freckles is an enthusiastic, tail-wagging Springer Spaniel, a breed of dog that used to be more popular in the 40s and 50s as a pet and as a hunting dog, but it's still a good, solid breed for upland game. Now, Springers got their name from their hunting behavior. They don't point game, they flush birds from cover. Springers use their noses to scent game birds on the ground. Oh, they have excellent noses. And they use their noses to close in on the birds, but they don't have the instinct to freeze on point. Freckles has a peculiar habit of circling a bird she smells, tightening the circle closer and closer. She's trying to pinpoint the bird's exact location. And then the flush.
Hold that bird. Hold that bird.
The birds we're working with here are hunting preserve birds at the Bourbon Barrel Hunt Club near Imlay City. The birds are quail, chukar partridge, and pheasant. And Freckles shows that Springers do well at retrieving game, too. In contrast to the Springer Spaniel with its long hair and flushing instinct is the German short-haired pointer, another breed that was actually more popular a few years back than it is now. Now, it's a great house dog, it's a good hunter, but too much breeding for show and for field trial has alienated a lot of hunters who like a solid working dog. The working bloodlines are difficult to find. Except for the bobbed tail that buzzes on an excited shorthair, they hold tight on a bird, moving only if the bird moves or the wind changes. Now, we know exactly where this bird is in front of the shorthair's nose, but I didn't know it was going to flush in my face. Well, I was too surprised to shoot. The quail got away. Warren Cahoon of the Bourbon Barrel trains all of these dogs, and one of his old favorites is Humphrey, a seasoned Brittany Spaniel who's had many years and many more birds under his belt than most dogs. Like a German Shorthair, Humphrey points game, but he looks more like a Springer since he is a Spaniel. He has the long hair, floppy ears, and his tail is bobbed. Now, he was just on point right there. The bird moved, and Humphrey lost the strong scent, so he moved on too. Brittany's are small dogs, but when they're in good condition, they cover a lot of territory. You'll see Humphrey lock up on a solid point right here.
Oh, right there. Oh, I see it.
Rock solid. And I see the bird.
No, this is a chukar right here. There's a chukar right in front of me. See John right there?
Yep.
That's a chukar partridge, a popular game farm bird. When you spot them close like this, you want to let them fly out a distance before you shoot. I cringe a little bit.
Dead on.
The straightaway shot is an easy one where
Will
an
he
open
retrieve it?
pattern barrel works best. Back with the chucker is Humphrey, showing the retrieving skills of a Brittany. Now, Humphrey doesn't bring the bird directly to the trainer, but retrieving isn't the strong point of this breed. It's the keen nose and pointing skills and the love of hunting that makes the Brittany a breed that's growing in popularity, just like their cousin, the English setter. While Brittany's aren't as large as setters, they do have stamina and they make good house pets as well. But English setters definitely have the class with their flowing tails that wave and dance as they run. There's style and flash to English setters that are attractive to a lot of people. This is a young setter named Bones who Warren Cahoon had just started working with. Now, he makes the moves all right, but Warren says these instincts have to be developed. What's a trick to training? I know you can take a dog in a matter of days and turn its behavior around oftentimes, really bring it into a good working dog. Well, what's your secret?
We work with a dog. You as yourself, you think you work hard at something with a dog. You are, but for 20 minutes a day maybe, where we go out in an hour and a half on each dog, and you put some time on with them. And you can see where the dog's weaker, and you work on the weakest points first.
The English setter we put out, Bones, is a relatively young dog, relatively inexperienced dog.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he probably pointed 20 birds at most in his lifetime, the way he acted when we first come out with him.
Mm-hmm. But you still, when we had the quail in front of it, you lifted up its tail, you actually touched the dog while it was pointing.
Right. The dog is not that accustomed to having to point that. It's bred into him, but until you work the finer points out on him, they've done enough of it, it doesn't come naturally sometimes.
When Warren gets out both dogs, now the older and more experienced Brittany and the younger English setter, you can see a definite difference, not only in ability, but in social interaction. The Brittany is locked on point, but Bones won't get near him. The young setter sticks near Warren because, well, Bones is a little tired. But Humphrey had just snarled at Bones a few minutes earlier for getting too close and too friendly. Bones was intimidated. So Warren reaches down and flushes the pheasant that Humphrey is holding on point. Humphrey finished his job by bringing back the pheasant. A well-trained dog. The recipe for this week was a finalist in our 1990 Fish and Wild Game Cooking Contest. It features a small migratory game bird that many people don't know how to cook, a woodcock, popularly known as a timber doodle. This recipe is not only tasty, but Elaine Skiba from Ossining created a presentation that is also very unique. These are nesting in halves of acorn squash and stuffed with hamburger, potato chips, egg, barbecue sauce, and spices. Elaine Skiba says it's a winner with her family.
Well, I think my husband shot about 25, 30 of them this year. And so I thought if I fix up a special dish and make it a different flavor, that it'll be, and then a lot of them cut the legs off too, and which we don't. It makes it look more elegant, I think, the dish.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Now, you've probably tried woodcock a lot of different ways.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Is this the best?
I like it the best because it's nice and tender. Now, I have fried it, in batter and in cracker crumbs, and then put it in the roaster. It's good that way, too. It cuts that flavor. Mm-hmm.
What flavor?
Well, it's a strong flavor, they say. A lot of people don't like it because of that strong flavor. So that's why I invented this recipe.
So how did this woodcock recipe sit with our panel of judges? Well, it got an early nod by the first judge, and the second to comment was none other than Mr. Michigan Outdoors, Mort Neff, a gentleman who we miss on television, but his tradition lives on. I'll bet you that Mort's going to agree, because Mort likes this kind of recipe.
Well, you couldn't find a better rabbit recipe than the one we just tasted. It's simply superb. But my heart goes out to the timber doodle, too. A migratory fowl that is controlled by federal regulations, despite the fact that it nests prolifically in Michigan, and it has a flavor that's absolutely unique in wildlife, I think. So for this very ingenious recipe for the timber doodle, I vote yes.
That's your vote. Well, okay. Another consensus between the twins here. Garner and Neff. What about you, John?
I tell you, the timber doodle was wonderful. I mean, they have half the acorn, you got your vegetable, the bird itself, the stuffing was wonderful, kind of perky, really nice. But
Chef John McKenzie turned the tables on this one. The recipe he voted for will be presented next week on The Practical Sportsman. But let's go to Chef Pat McGuire for some tips on how you can enjoy this dish even if you don't have any woodcock in the freezer.
I'll tell you what, I have to go with timber doodles also.
Doodles?
Yeah, I thought they were great. What I see in this recipe, I can use this at one of my restaurants. I'd put a little hot homemade cranberry sauce with some port wine over the top, and I'll tell you what, it'd be a winner. I like it very much.
What could you substitute for timber doodles? You can't serve timber doodles in your restaurant.
Well, yeah, I can get timber doodles. Can I?
can?
Well, why not? No, what I would probably use, I told Mike I'd probably use Cornish hen. Nice Cornish hen. Could use squab, you could use quail. Yeah, quite a few things.
Well, we do have a winner. We have a winner. Congratulations,
Thank you
Elaine,
very
on the
much,
timber
yeah.
doodles. You want a copy of that recipe? Hey, it's in the August-September issue of the Practical Sportsman magazine. The cover is an original pheasant painting by Lansing artist Tom Phillips. His name is Chancey Shaw. He lives on a back road near North Branch. 3 years ago in February, he invited me for a drive on an ATV in his back 40. Chancey said the sound of the ATV would attract a wild, rough grouse to come up and eat corn out of our hands.
About 6 months ago, I was riding a four-wheeler back here, and I noticed a bird, along the side of the trail. I started seeing it quite often, like every day I go back here. One day I stopped, and, I figured the bird would run off, and she stayed right there. I sat there and watched her a while, and I started to take off, and she would just kind of follow along with me. Didn't show any signs of fear or anything. So this went on for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I'd come up every day and stop, and she'd just come right over to me.
Well, what's going to happen when we go back there now?
Okay, I think she'll probably show just a slight sign of nervousness. She might be a little bit nervous, but I'm quite sure when we get back there, she'll come running right out to us.
She'll just do what when she comes running out?
I think she'll, with the 3 of us back there with the 2 machines, I think what she'll do, she'll probably stay back about 10 feet, and she'll just kind of walk around. Now, there's a possibility she may just come right to us, right up to us. But you'll definitely see her. She'll come out. You'll see her coming running right through the brush.
How long will she stay?
As long as you're back there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. As long as you're there. In fact, if we travel around the trails back there, she'll go with us.
I'll be darned.
It's really amazing.
Ruffed grouse aren't the wariest of game birds because every now and then we hear about one that is attracted to a noise. It's always the low-level purring of an engine. As long as the engine is on, the grouse seems comfortable. Grouse are extremely pretty birds. This one's tail is more reddish than most. There's really no way to be sure if this is a male or a female without handling the bird, but that wasn't going to happen. Chancey's prediction was 100% accurate, though. The grouse walked back and forth about 10 feet away until it finally was comfortable enough or got up enough courage to run in for a beakful of corn. Once it got a kernel of corn, it wanted more, but something evidently scared it. Then we were back to strutting about 10 feet away. Well, I wonder what her future will be if she'll have a little nest of...
Well, see, that's what I'm kind of hoping. I think, if it is a she, I think this spring, when she hatches, her eggs out, she may bring them up too.
That'd be kind of neat.
Oh, I sure would. And my biggest concern is that the lifespan of a grouse is generally pretty short, and you never know from day to day, when she might get, killed by a hawk or an owl.
Odds were that this grouse would be long gone by now, but it isn't. We just learned that Chancey still drives back to the woods every day and feeds this grouse. He's looked for baby grouse in the spring, but he's never seen any, so this must be a male, or else it's a female hopelessly in love with the sound of the ATV. Chancey's grouse is a wildlife oddity. one we hope lives on Chansey's back 40 for a long time. We're going to be down off South Haven, another perch trip, the last Saturday in August. It's with local radio station Q106. We're going to have a good time. So if you want information on that, give us a call. Otherwise, have a good time and see ya. The English setter we put out, Bones, is a relatively young dog, relatively inexperienced dog.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he probably pointed 20 birds at most in his lifetime, the way he acted when we first come out with it.
Mm-hmm. But you still, when we had the quail in front of it, you lifted up its tail, you actually touched the dog while it was pointing.
Right. The dog is not that accustomed to having to point that. It's bred into them, but until you work the finer points out on them, they've done enough of it. It doesn't come naturally sometimes.